What's up, YouTube? Here we go, episode 39, Conversations with the Mind with Tom Martin. Woo! Alright, folks, welcome back to Conversations with the Mind. I'm your host, Shane Lemaster, and we are joined by a good friend, Tom Martin. How are you, sir?
Doing good. How about yourself?
Doing excellent. The weather finally cleared up, but I heard it's going to snow again next week. We've been kind of in this cycle here in Colorado where we'll get like dumped on for like a day or two, and then the next day it'll be 80 degrees.
Yeah, it's kind of miserable because you start to get ready for spring, and then it's just mud.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, I'm sure you. Yeah, we'll get into that too here in a minute. What you do, but yeah, and so you guys know from the intro, if you're watching on YouTube, this is our first ever podcast that we're streaming or we're putting up on YouTube. So please give us some feedback and let us know what we need to fix, and we'll continue to improve. So Tom, I wanted to have you on the show for some of my own personal reasons. I want to get to know you better.
Mm-hmm.
But I also wanted to ask you, the question that's always on my mind around consciousness. And you've listened to the podcast before, so you know this question's coming.
Yeah.
And so what does the phrase "conversations with the mind" mean to you, and how does that resonate with you? How does that unpack and unfold in your mind?
Well, it's kind of been an evolving thing, especially since listening to your podcast. Because initially, to me, it was kind of that when I heard it and read the name, like thinking almost like Vulcan mind meld, like two minds meeting somewhere in the middle, and like sharing ideas. And then it kind of started also including like collective conscience, and the collective conscious, and then it's become also that like internal conversation, like conversation in the mind. For me, it's been something that I've been spinning.
Nice. So let's start with that first one, because all three of those things are really distinct and really important parts of that conversation.
Yeah. I
think so. The first one, the two minds coming together to meld. That's kind of what you and I are doing right now, right?
Yeah.
And that's the whole purpose of the podcast. I said that in the first couple episodes. It's just a meeting of the minds, and let's see what we create and see what comes out, and hopefully it can help somebody. Do you think that when those minds come together like we are, do you think what we create, what do they say, like the sum is greater than its parts?
Yeah.
So what we create is much greater when we create it together as opposed to what we create on our own?
Yeah, I think a lot of the time, even when you create things on your own, like if you don't share those with other people, like kind of what's the point? In a way, not really what's the point, but in sharing it with other people, you also can improve what you've
what you've created, or
yeah,
what you've adopted for yourself.
Yeah.
Well, my mind always goes to like jujitsu, and I think if I learned as much as I've learned in jiu-jitsu, but never had an opportunity to like share it with anybody or teach anybody about the philosophy of it, then I think it would have less value to me personally, but I don't know, it would be difficult. It's just, it's difficult holding on to something like that,
That's exactly what I was like struggling to find the words for, is that in sharing it with other people, it's like more fulfilling to me. And I guess maybe it's a personal thing, but like to me, if I don't share those things that I've created, they don't have as much value to me,
And why is that? Because I feel the same thing too.
I think part of it is because I can find the ways to. If I don't share it with you, I don't get feedback on it. I think it's the ultimate of what I can reach in my potential. If I get the feedback from somebody else, then that gives me pointers of these are the places that you can improve it, and then I can reach further than I thought I could.
See, I think that's exactly what it is, and I don't know about your view, your spiritual worldview, and please let me know if you want to share about that. But from my spiritual worldview, you are simply a reflection of me. We're one and the same. We're made out of the same atoms, and if we're of this singular consciousness and we're just fractals of it, then you are essentially me, and the way I treat you is going to have an impact on me, right?
Mm-hmm.
So by sharing something with you and getting that feedback, right? It's almost like you give me feedback that I already knew, but you're the messenger, right? So without you to bounce it off of, maybe I'll never have that insight inside of myself, right?
Yeah. And same thing with ideas, and not just like the things that like for me, I'm very hands-on. I like to build things, so it's always about kind of creating things, less so ideas. But with ideas as well, like, you think a certain way, but if you don't bounce it off of somebody else, those two meetings of the meeting of the mind is the creation of, the greater than the sum of their two parts. Like, your ideas don't expand and grow. You're stuck in that smaller mindset.
Yeah, it's almost like we close ourselves in, or we paint ourselves into a corner with our own ideologies. Like, we get stuck in our own belief systems and stuck in our own mind states, and our mind states can shift and things like that. But we'll get ourselves stuck, and we'll feel like we have to dig in and defend it. You know, instead of, I think it's a lot more productive, a lot more difficult. I'm still working on this, but a lot more productive to be like open to learning and adjusting my viewpoints and my belief systems and my value systems, things like that. This week in my group therapy, I do addiction work, and in my group therapy this week we're talking about value systems and belief systems, and I help them break it down, like asking yourself, like, where do our values come from? What are values? First of all, values are things that drive behaviors. They're so much more than goals. They're not really things that we achieve, but they're things that like are underlying drives for us, the things that get us going, right? So that if those are what values are, and we can hopefully explore for ourselves and name some of what our values and strengths are. If we can identify those, then we can start to use those like for our benefit. And I don't even know where I was going with that, but honestly, I don't know. Maybe I just got a little too ripped right before. No, but it'll come back. But speaking about value systems and identifying, like, where did they come from? Were they imposed on you by someone else, by advertising, by TV, by your parents, by religion, by your friends? Like, where do your values come from? And taking a look at your own values and saying, like, are these mine or are these someone else's? And do I need these anymore? Are they useful to me, or can I get rid of them? And through their addiction and now recovery, like, I let them know, like, you're being given an amazing opportunity that most people don't take, to like lay all your values on the table and pick and choose which ones are going to work for you and let the rest of them go. The ones that keep you in that box, the ones that keep you stuck in that ideology, right? Those are the ones that we need to take a closer look at and be like, are those even useful anymore?
And that kind of like a part of spiritual and emotional growth is the act of doing that.
Yeah. The process of.
Yeah. That is the, the process of improvement and growth, right?
Sure. So that was the first idea of conversations with the mind. The second one you said was engaging with the collective consciousness, which was a new topic for you. Yeah,
somewhat. I mean, it had been introduced to me when I was younger. Do you know the movie Waking Life? Yeah, trippy ass movie, visually on its own. But then when you actually get into the ideas that they discuss in that, when you're like a younger kid, like I was in high school, and some of the ideas in that just blew my mind.
So in high school I didn't even understand the ideas. They were over my head.
And they introduced, I forget which scene it's in, but they introduced the idea of the collective conscious in talking about different scientific discoveries happening on opposite sides of the globe at the exact same time without communication between the 2 points, and some study about crossword puzzles that they did, kind of a double blind, where people were given yesterday's crossword puzzles, and they did better because the answers were already out there.
Yeah, I think I read about that.
Yeah. So that's where that idea was first introduced to me. And then in hearing it on this podcast, because I listen to it pretty often, it just kind of got that back into my mind. Brought it back up for me. Just kind of the idea that you can gain knowledge just from what's out there. Yeah.
I often get a feeling like walking through campus, any campus, CSU, CU Boulder, like I just walk around, I feel like I'm soaking in knowledge just by being there, right? Because all that data, all that information, all that intentional studying is like in the air.
Yeah.
You can almost feel it, you know, like a vibration. I think that's really cool. Yeah, okay. So, I mean, you mentioned some really cool studies. Well, I don't even know if those were studies, but just like observations that were made. Like, hey, this was kind of weird that this happened. And I don't know, do you get into like quantum theory at all around
that's over my head.
Well, some of the things like I think it's either quantum non-locality or superposition, one of those two, that says that like if two particles have been in contact with each other, they've like shared some communication at some point in existence, then they always have a bond because of that information shared. And so when one particle is like on the other side of the planet and one's here, and this has been studied too in different laboratories, and you like agitate one particle, the other one will respond with the agitation as well. So they're like quantumly connected on a vibrational level, but it's not like it happens like one happens here and then like a couple minutes later it happens here. It's like simultaneous. So it's instantaneous, and they've measured that too on that teeny tiny level. But what you shared about the scientists getting discoveries, I've heard of that too, and that's sort of even more quantum, I think, because that's like in the thought realm, right? Like, I don't know about you, I've had like these in the past like ideas for inventions, like, oh, that'd be a freaking sweet idea if I just write it down, and then like 2 months later you'll see it on the market or like in a magazine. Like, what the hell? Like,
you think of a cool company name for something, and then suddenly there's one out there that, oh yeah, they just started a little while ago.
Right.
You know, it's interesting how that always happens, and most people write it up to coincidence. But in getting that thought in my mind, like it kind of makes you wonder, think about things more in terms of that. And I guess it would be like quantum level things, because we're all made up of molecules and atoms, and if you agitate one over here and one responds over here, then that's your brain functioning right there.
Well, it's all like butterfly effect, like times a zillion, on the smallest scales. Every atom influencing every other atom. It's pretty intense.
Yeah.
So what do you think about the idea, now that you have some sense of at least what collective consciousness could mean, like as a theory? What do you think about, like, as far as some of the implications? Or for me, like, I always think about, like, how do I access that? Like, how do I tap into it? How do I make use of it? Because just knowing that it's there, is great, but I want to be able to use it. So that's where my thoughts go. So I'm going to adjust this while we're talking. But
that's exactly what I was going to say. Is it it makes you kind of wonder, how do you access it? And what's the potential there? Because that's pretty much untapped potential if you can tie into the collective conscious, because that's all knowledge that's ever been collected and accumulated anywhere ever. It's out there. If there's a way to actually access that, why not shoot for it?
Do you feel like you've ever my co-host Ty is walking around, he's patrolling, so if you guys hear him drinking water or growling or something, that's him. Tank's upstairs hanging with Mom. But yeah, sorry, what were we talking about?
Tapping in.
The tapping in. So how do you, or have you had any instances of like getting exposed to like a little drip or a little tap from that collective conscious? Do you feel like you've ever had a download?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Well, yeah, I don't even know if any of us have. I don't know. I know there's people who've talked about it. Nikola Tesla getting, he thought he was getting beamed information from extraterrestrials. Really famous scientists in the past have felt or talked about like tapping into a larger knowledge base or a record system. A lot of psychedelic researchers and stuff have talked about using those medicines to get to that, passing that over that veil, over that curtain. Yeah, but who knows? I mean, I've had a couple like spiritual experiences where I've had the whole like white light experience, things like that, and I've had breathworks and psychedelic experiences and altered states of consciousness through like extreme sports, and Zen states and just things that come naturally. And I feel like in some of those moments, I get like a little glimpse at like just a little taste of the information, but not even enough to make that much sense of. Maybe dreaming too.
Yeah,
dreaming can be a way to tap in.
I was gonna say like kind of that flow state in extreme sports, like that would be the closest thing for me that I would think of maybe tapping into something else. Because I mean, you get to a point where you're not even thinking about what you're doing, and everything is just happening flawlessly. Like,
right, you get out of
everything lines up. Yeah.
So yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on the show today. Is I've known you for about 6 months now. We've been training together, some jiu-jitsu at Z's, and but I don't know much about you in your everyday life. I know you do construction. I saw you out in town one day, and I know you do mountain biking semi-professionally. But I'm really interested in, I have a master's degree in sport and performance psychology, so I'm always fascinated with sports and particularly extreme sports, and really the mindset that goes into that. Because, I mean, what percentage of people go out and do that kind of stuff?
I really don't know. There's not a huge
less than 1%.
Number. I would think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a to within our own world, it's a big crowd, but I couldn't really tell you. I don't think there's a lot of people that at least go at it at that constant rate that the little traveling circus that is the group that's always going to these races is. It's a small group, at least in this area.
Right, but even in general, like, I don't think there's that many people out there that even pursue, call it death-defying or physically risky activity. Like, it seems like, I don't know about you, but most people I see out in everyday life or that I talk to, like, they don't do things that are hardening them, or that are testing their grit, challenging them. I see a lot of I don't know if it's laziness or maybe it's fear. Like people.
I think that's a lot of it.
Afraid of
most
the risk.
People tell me that I'm crazy. They're like, "Oh my God, aren't you scared of getting hurt?" It's like, well, yeah. It sucks being hurt. I'm injured right now. I can't do anything. Like, it's not fun. But I mean, there's also injuries you can play through. I've Velcroed my hands to the handlebars when they're broken sometimes so I can race.
Holy crap.
Yeah.
Tell me that story. That sounds nuts.
That was Nationals 2015. I went over the handlebars in practice. There's actually a photo of me like doing a headstand with my bike still clipped into my feet. And in the process broke my hand, like ripped it open, ended up needing 5 stitches.
So you're clipped in?
Yeah,
okay,
I clipped
I
in
didn't
the
even know
pedals.
that.
Yeah. It's so you can pick up the bike with your feet and kind of jump over rocks and over holes. Makes it a little bit easier, and then you have more pedal power.
Okay. Couldn't you do that with like a foot basket? That's
yeah,
what I've always
but
used.
that would not. I don't know. I mean, it's either like flat pedal with heavy pins.
Yeah, right.
Those suck to catch in the shins.
Oh yeah.
And I pop off the pedals when I ride flat, so I like to clip in when I race. Just a little bit more control. But I made it down to the bottom of the hill, fixed my bike, taped my hand up, and luckily I had a set of gloves that my mom had sewn Velcro onto, so I could Velcro the glove back to itself around the handlebars, and just Velcro my hand to the bars, and then went and raced.
Yikes.
Yeah.
With a busted hand.
Yeah, I ended up top 10 in the nation. I mean, there was only probably like 12 people that showed up in my category. That at the time I think I was Cat 2, so that was it goes Cat 1, Cat 2, Cat 3, Cat 2, Cat 1 Pro. And I race Cat 1 now, but I mean I started at the bottom, and at the time at that Nationals I was in Category 2.
So you're like right on the verge of being a pro.
Yeah. It's the fact that top percentage of guys is so fast, and the way that they actually do those races at the higher level, they thin it down. You have to do a qualifying race, and at the race, like each race day or race weekend, you do a qualifier, and they only take the top 75 or 100 depending on the race and the size. So sometimes, I mean, you chase you go all the way to a race and then you end up not qualifying and getting to do it. And I'm, come to realize I'm not that fast, like as those guys. Like that top pro percentage, those guys are crazy fast.
So the disparity in speed, it sounds like, is like the major component, right? The disparity between your level, which is right under pro, as opposed to like the top level pros, that disparity is huge.
Massive.
It's like the gap. So how does well, and that's the big question. How does one bridge that gap? How does one turn yourself into, one of these super athlete mountain biker? Like, how do you bridge that? How do you close that?
I don't know. I mean, I think a lot of that is in the fact that, having the time to train and growing up doing it. I got into it in my 20s.
How long have you been doing it?
Since 2010.
Almost 10 years.
Yeah, almost. And I've been racing since, like actually racing since 2013, 2014.
So you've only been racing, what, like 5 years?
5-6 years, yeah.
And you're already almost pro?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I'll ever go pro. I mean,
is that ever a goal of yours?
It was, but I mean, the injuries and reality kind of set in too, just because of also like budget, because it's expensive. It's extremely expensive. Bikes cost up to $10,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And and you can wreck the bike on any given race day.
Yeah, potentially.
Well, I would imagine that's an expensive one. My expensive hobby is shooting.
Yeah.
So guns get really expensive. Ammo's expensive.
Ammo's expensive.
Like the optics that I put on my things are like, on my rifles are like, $1,200 optics.
Easy.
And these things get ridiculous. But I don't know. We're boys and we like our toys. You know? And when you think about it, the money you put into it, you get so much more out of the sport.
Oh yeah.
It makes it all worth it. Like you would pour your heart and soul into it because it's not about, it's not about being a pro. Maybe at one time it was.
At one time it was a goal, but I mean, now at least like hopefully this year I'll be able to go to World Championships for Masters. So that'll be the closest that I can get because it's a full-on World Cup track. So I'll get to race on the World Cup track that the actual pros, are on.
So you can gauge your time against what theirs is.
And it's not even quite about that. It's just like that's the highest level I can get to is participating in a World Championship. So
it'd be awesome.
Yeah, we'll see. Hopefully, I can make it there.
What's the I know some sports have like a certain age range where people will peak in. What's the age range for peak competition in your sport?
Anywhere between 18 and 36.
Okay. So
because
after
I mean
36.
No, I think Greg Menard's 36, 37 years old, and he's still at it. He's in his 30s. I know that, mid to late 30s, and he's still one of the top level pros. And then there's guys that are coming in that once they turn 18, they go from junior expert into pro, and those guys are winning races too. So it's really hard to judge. Because as you get older, your mental game gets better. And I mean, now people claim that your physical prime is at 30. So I think that, as unless they're just really wise young, like some of the reason that some of these guys are able to race into their late 30s and still be a top level pro is their mental game is so much better.
Well, I certainly believe in that too.
Yeah,
that's what I do for a living.
Exactly. Right.
But I'm noticing that too. Like, I'm in my mid-30s, and technically I should be in my physical prime. But by this point in my athletic career, like I'm so beat up and broken too. Like, my body does not feel 35. It feels much like right now I'm dealing with I think I tweaked and pulled my back, almost threw my back completely out last night and this morning. So that's why I'm adjusting. I'm sitting all weird right now and breathing funky. So, anyway.
Yeah, there's a lot of injuries that stack up pretty quick, and that's part of what, those guys. The difference between, at least for me, guys like me or me individually, and some of those pros is also the ability to just not crash and not get injured.
Right, and that's what I'm noticing too. Is people who have really long competitive lives. The majority of them are fortunate to not have many injuries, right? They somehow avoid it, better
Yeah.
or something, or just naturally athleticism plays into that. But you know, for some of us and a lot of us, we do get major injuries, and that takes a toll on, you know, are we going to keep competing, or are we ever going to reach that level? And
Yep.
you know, I used to have goals of wanting to be, you know, world champion this and world champion that and stuff, and
Doesn't every kid that does sports?
sure, sure, and you know, I still hold hopes for maybe Masters Division Worlds someday. I'd love to at least compete, man. That would be awesome in Masters and Jiu-Jitsu, but I also realize that, you know, my injuries give me limitations.
Yeah.
You know, and I have to learn to work around that instead of having it be something that makes me quit. Like I don't want something like that to ever make me quit.
Well, it's all about adapt and overcome, right?
Right. Well, the mental toughness is what we're getting at, you know, and some people just don't have that. Like so many people I've known, you know, will come into jiu-jitsu or any other sport, MMA, and get their first major injury, and then I never see them again.
Yeah.
You know, and they maybe had so much potential or whatever, but they let someone let the fear overtake them. Like, I don't know if I can ever do that. I can't put myself in that position ever again. Some people, you know, the pain is just so overwhelming that they're like, I don't ever want to risk that again.
Yeah.
Some people get so scared.
Went to a little bit of a dark place after I recently had my MCL popped in a tournament. I'm going to be getting an MRI Wednesday to find out.
Wednesday, nice.
Yeah. What
how
the
did that
damage
happen
is.
in the tournament?
It was just a deep half guard, and I was on top in deep half guard, and he had my right leg locked down, and he underhooked my leg and was going to roll me, and when he did that, his lockdown rotated to the side of my leg, and he had it up high behind the knee, and it, you know, his foot that was locked down was on my shin still, but it rotated around to the side and popped it sideways, out to the side. So, you know, dealing with that right now. But I definitely got worried, kind of freaked out right when it happened, that, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to mountain bike this year, and this year is when Masters World Championships is. And, but then it's just kind of like, all right, well, how am I going to get through this? What am I going to do? And instead of like continuing to worry about it.
So you were focused already on the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
From the get-go.
Yeah.
Okay, this happened, but that you have to have some level of acceptance, right, to be able to move on to that solution, right?
Yeah.
I think a lot of people will get stuck on the, you know, the self-pity part.
Yeah.
You know, like, this happened to me, poor me, why now? You know, the timing's wrong. Instead of being like, okay, this happened, there's nothing I can do about it now, except for rehab to the best of my ability, and then use it in the future to drive me.
For me, I think why now is still a legitimate question, but not in that negative way. I think it's why now the timing might be right for something else. You know, like, I mean, I've been going pretty hard at the gym. Like, maybe I hurt my leg because I'm overworked, needed the time off. Who knows?
Well, the timing is perfect.
Yeah,
timing
that's exactly
perfect.
what I mean. Yeah.
Right.
So why now? But so what's the reason? Why now?
So yeah, it's like a why now. Like, honestly, you're curious to learn from it.
Yes.
Like, you want to know.
Yeah, that's kind of the point that I've gotten to now, and I mean, maybe that's part of that. You know, your mental game, getting better with maturity. I think maturity over age. I don't think age matters so much.
No, I know a lot of older people that are not mature.
Exactly, that's what I mean. You know, I'm a grown-ass child. That's for sure. And you know, trying to like learn and grow in that side of me, you know, and that the maturity side of things. Like, because I can still, you know, you can, I guess, grow up mature, but you don't actually have to grow up and still be a kid. Because I mean, I'm 31 years old and still riding a mountain bike as fast as I can down a hill, dodging trees. Like,
well, what does mature mean?
You know, that's I guess that's a big question, right? Like, I think for me, maturity more has to do with your emotional state, kind of knowing that, like, you can not control your emotions, but I mean, you're like, you know where they're coming from, you know what they're based on, and you're not like,
yeah, we call this emotional intelligence.
yes.
So having some understanding of your own emotions, but also, being able to hold your shit together when you need to. You know, some sense of a little bit of mastery, or at least practice,
and kind of like the empathy to understand like other people, like what other people's emotions might be, right?
So being able to take an altered perspective, or
in doing that, you're like, you're treating people better, you're treating yourself better, and I think that's kind of that maturity for me, or like what my definition of it would be, is that kind of level of emotional intelligence to understand like where things are coming from and how to treat people better and yourself, take care of yourself better.
I think maturity also has a lot or is strongly tied to like self-awareness. So like when you're talking, I'm trying to think of like, well, what's the best examples of mature people that I know, and it was really hard for me to like pick out character traits of what makes a mature person. But I think sometimes the easiest way to put your finger on what you're looking at is to look at the opposite of what it is. So I'm like, what does an immature person look like? Well, an immature person is like totally...
Oh,
there's Ty.
Invaders.
Yep.
Thank you for keeping us safe. Good boy.
Ty, come here. Yeah, my co-host, he's on security duty right now too. Yeah, come here. Good boy. Come join the podcast. All right. So where was I?
Immature.
I keep losing. Yeah, I keep
traits
losing,
of immature people.
Keep losing my train of thought.
In order to find that
herb was really good. Anyway, so in order to find out for myself, like, what does maturity mean, I had to look at immature in my mind, and to me that's like people who are emotionally unregulated, so zero control over their emotional state at any given time, zero awareness of other people's emotion and how they're impacting other people. And also, I don't know, I think there has this self-awakening, this self-awareness, so they're not aware necessarily of who they are or how they're impacting other people, whereas the mature person is sort of like, okay, I know where I sit a little bit. I know my place in the world just a little bit, or I have some understanding of the interconnectedness, how I affect other people. So, but you can still be mature and do immature things. Right? You can still be mature and do mountain biking. I'm sure you could do mountain biking while being mature.
Oh yeah, definitely. There's some of the very successful people that I know that they come out on the weekends and get stupid with us going down the mountain.
Nice.
And that's just something that I've been learning. And like trying to grow and mature is like learning that I can still do these certain childish things and still take care of my shit. I think that is an important piece of maturity that I think most people don't understand, that we're taught from a young age, or from our teenage years, get rid of all the childish things. Get rid of your imagination, get rid of your creativity. But what I'm starting to realize now is that part of being mature and part of being whole as a human being is like I have to engage and balance with my playful side and my creative side and my artistic side, because I live so much of my life in the rational realm, like problem solving, rational, day-to-day scheduling and crap like that. I need to find that balance in those other childish things, and I think through that balance we'll find more wisdom about ourselves, more self-awareness, and gain a higher level of maturity. What do you think? I mean, it's the same sort of thing for me, because I work in manual labor and construction, and it's pretty formulaic. I cut and drill concrete and asphalt. So it's the same process on repeat, and the things I enjoy about it are when I get to problem solve, when it's actually different. There's just some weird little tweak or challenge about how to set up my equipment or do my job.
The things that keep you on your toes.
Yeah, that's the part I like about it, right? But for the most part, it's just kind of drive to a job site and do the same thing,
Same in my job too, man.
Yeah.
I hear so many of the same story over and over and over, and that's the monotonous part of the work, because a lot of people's suffering and addictions and pain come from similar sources. So it makes sense that I hear the same stories over and over. But it's the clients that come to me and they have really unique backgrounds or circumstances that sort of keep me going every single day, keep me going to work every day, you know, because I hope that, you know, I can, you know, it's like I'm doing a podcast at work every day too, you know, just talking to everyday people, like getting into their mind and like what's going on, man.
Yeah, and so with work being that way, like kind of it's nice to have these other creative outlets and places where you can go like be wild and you know do it different.
So for you, your creative outlets are the mountain biking and jiu-jitsu currently, right?
In terms of physical, like that sort of a thing, yeah.
So then what are like, do you have any intellectual pursuits that you're...
Well, I mean, I learned how to make knives and...
Nice.
I mean, it's still a lot of like very physically based things where I'm still creating things. I like working with my hands. Growing up, I was always told to be productive. You know, get woken up and go be productive. So, you know, do your chores before you can go out and go have fun. You know, and like I learned how to make certain things enjoyable. You know what I mean? Like I like doing yard work now.
I used to hate it when I was a kid.
I always kind of enjoyed it, but
I loved getting paid to do it.
Yeah,
my mom would pay me.
Paid.
That's the only way she could get us out there to pull weeds. But
No,
now in my like you said, like I really enjoy it now.
Yeah.
Like it's really grounding for me, just being outside in nature, and that's got to be another benefit of mountain biking too. Like, I would love to get back into a sport that's outdoors like that.
Yeah, that's I mean that's one of the things that's really nice is you go to these race venues and you don't have good cell service, so you just sort of turn it off, and I mean you're concentrating on like rock, tree, rock, turn, jump, like you know trying to make sense of the hill and let off the brakes as much as possible. You know, it's very cleansing of the mind.
I'm sure.
There's not much else you can think about when you're doing that.
Right.
And that's again like that's that closest to you know hitting flow state and tapping into something else that I've ever gotten is like doing that.
Right. So the courses that you do, and I'm trying to imagine it in my head, but there's a few scenarios that are going through my head. One is that it's just straight up natural terrain. There's a trail, you go down the hill. Another one I'm thinking of is when I walk through the forest and I see like those wooden bank turns that are pre-created. I'm thinking of courses with that. And then the third thing I'm thinking of is like those mountain biking videos that I see of guys like racing down ridges and doing really far drops off of like rock faces and stuff. Like I'm having a tough time, and this is just my ignorance in the field of mountain biking.
I
but
guess
like,
it needs to be kind of explained.
Yeah,
it does bear explaining.
Yeah. What do you think?
It's most of the time it's at a ski resort
Okay.
for the racing because the lift makes it a whole lot easier. Otherwise, you got to use a shuttle truck, and I mean, there's things like they'll load bikes into the back or bikes and riders into the back of U-Haul vans, and then just drive them up to the top of the hill, or you know, flatbed trucks, all kinds of different setups for that, and that's a lot more time intensive and labor intensive versus the ski resorts. So around here, at least, mostly it's at ski resorts, Keystone, Winter Park, Granby, Vail, Crested Butte. They've all got mountain bike parks now where you ride the lift to the top, and it's trails just kind of winding their way back down the mountain all the way to the base. And usually the race course is the most direct line through the worst terrain that they can find because they want it to be difficult, they want it to be fast.
But it's all natural terrain?
It's a combination of machine built and hand built trail, so kind of like your skinny single track hiking trail into wider sections, you know, machine width, 6-8 feet wide that have huge jumps and.
So there are man-made obstacles.
There's a lot of man-made obstacles they'll put in. Some of them only for like safety reasons. It just depends on the race course and the race organizer what type of race they're trying to have, especially with the local races.
So what are the races then that use the prefabbed bank turns and things like that?
The berms, you know, so some of that's built into the trail. There'll be berms and turns, and it's just kind of all up to trail builder discretion, and then the race organizer what they decide they want the race course to be, because the trails are all pre-built on the mountain. So that's they've got summer-long bike park up at, Winter Park, for example, and they've got the established trail system, and then they just interconnect different trails to create a race course. So they want to have something that's wide and machine built with the wooden jumps and things like that. They'll tie that section into another piece where they want it to be much more natural, skinny, winding through the trees, and kind of cobble together race courses in that way.
Yeah, I like the variability. And those ski resorts they're experts at making those the ski runs as long as possible.
Yeah.
Right? Because you got to wait on the freaking lift forever. They might as well make it like a mile or two to get down the hill. I'm sure they can do the same thing with the...
Yeah, with the mountain biking, it's the same sort of a thing. And then it's organized the same way as a ski resort, where it's green through black, and then they have got extreme as well. There's some places that even have trails that you've got to take a safety course and prove that you can ride it, because it's people can get hurt hitting jumps that big. The ridgeline stuff you were describing, that's actually an event called Red Bull Rampage, or sometimes it's just guys that free ride that stuff for fun. But that's not racing generally. That's a huge free ride competition, so that's its own pigeonhole of the sport.
So that's kind of like if I were to translate into like snowboarding language, because that's what I've always known my whole life. Like racing would be sort of like alpine snowboarding, right? And then the ridgeline stuff would be more like slope style, freestyle. Like you're gonna pick a line and do the coolest trick or the coolest drop.
The big mountain.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's like biggest trick, biggest baddest trick, or best line that wins. Yeah. So
in terms of competition, yes. And then there's guys that just do it for fun as well.
So who's crazier, the racers or the ridgeline guys?
It's impossible to say.
Really?
Yeah,
Is there a debate on it?
I don't think there's much of a debate on it, because everybody appreciates what the other does. Because we all know how difficult it is. At least, I'm only speaking for myself. I don't know about other people.
Sure.
But I know how difficult it is to sack up and do something like that. And there's things those guys, I have tried to do tricks before. I almost got knocked out and ripped my chin open doing backflips. And that's when I stopped trying to ride park quite so much. That, and I took a really bad head slam on concrete, and you bounce off dirt and rocks a little bit better than you do concrete.
Yeah, I'm sure you don't bounce off trees too easily either.
Yeah, it's not fun. I've bounced off a couple. But I don't do the tricks anymore, because I never got that good at it, and these guys are extremely good at it. So I know how hard it is to learn and to do. So I have nothing but respect for it. I don't really care to try to compete with them. Yeah, and most of those guys are faster than me going down the hill anyway.
Okay. So you guys are both crazy.
Yeah.
But you guys are crazy in your own different ways.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think everybody's crazy.
Sure.
Everybody's just. I think that just applies to the entire human population.
Yeah.
Everybody's crazy in their own way.
And I like it this way.
Yeah.
I like being a little
more interesting.
Off. Yeah. I have a lot of people, come to me, and they tell me, I want to be normal. I want to feel normal. I want to behave normally, and I always have to challenge that use of that word. Like, well, what is normal? And is that what society says is normal? Is that what your parents say is normal? Like, is this what you think is normal? Like, what is normal?
Yeah, it's normal according to who?
Right, it's subjective, number one, and once you even figure out what normal is to you and you can define it, like, why would you want to be like everyone else? Why would you want to be normal? Like, I want to be an outlier. I want to be unique. I want to be different. I want to be remembered. I don't want to blend in with the crowd.
Yeah.
It's a difficult mindset for me to deal with as a therapist. Someone who wants to just be normal. So I always challenge that, just to get people thinking about, like, well, what does that mean to me? And most of the time people figure out that they're really not normal, from what they think they are, that they're actually extraordinary in a lot of ways. And that they're, self-sabotaging to try and maintain this normality, that society wants to keep them in this box, of normality, and that's what they think that they need to fit in, and if they don't, then they're going to be ostracized or, whatever. It's just interesting. But you and I, like, we embrace this uniqueness and this desire to want to go push ourselves and like put ourselves in challenging situations,
uncomfortable places.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, mountain biking it can be it's uncomfortable. Like a lot of guys get scared. You know the potential to get hurt is there. And I think that maybe, that's why like I take to jiu-jitsu so much, is like it's just all about being uncomfortable. Like, can I make you uncomfortable enough that you give up?
That's what it's about.
Yeah. So it's just dealing with uncomfortable situations and puzzling your way through them.
So maybe do you think that's another aspect of maturity? Like being able to deal with the uncomfortable in ways that are freeing or productive. Like I think that's a sign of maturity. Like,
yeah.
An immature person maybe can't adapt to adversity.
Yeah, I think that's probably part of it, because I mean, like you refuse to, like a kid throws a tantrum because they're not getting their way. Like versus an adult doesn't get their way, or like a mature person doesn't get what they want and they move on. All right, well, what's the next thing?
Yeah. And yeah, so that's why, I mean, you were talking about how you took to jiu-jitsu so well because of that.
Yeah, I mean,
mindset.
yeah, it's just, and it's another puzzle to solve. Like what can I do to get myself out of this situation? Where can I go? What's the move to make you do this? It's the same sort of thing with like mountain biking. Like, how do I make it down this trail fastest? What rock do I jump off of? Where do I want to keep my tires on the ground? Kind of.
So it's a strategic mindset that you're applying to both.
Yeah.
And you've developed that really well for the downhill. You have to pick your line.
Yeah.
And use the obstacles in creative ways. And you apply the same like strategy to jiu-jitsu, and that's probably why you took to it so well. Like, put your foot here, do the next step here. Like, this is my line to get to the submission.
Yep.
And yeah, I find that people who have an athletic background or who've been athletes in other sports who come over usually adapt their mindset pretty well to jiu-jitsu and find it really enjoyable. I think it's one of the best sports to engage like the mental side of the sport. Like, it's such a chess match, not only physically, but like way more intense up here in your mind, the chess match that's going on.
Well, because it's easy to kind of spin out of control. Which I guess that's that kind of like that third thing of
spin out of control.
Like,
physically?
I mean, yeah, well, no, in your
mentally.
mind. Yeah, mentally. Like you get into the uncomfortable situations and, you start to kind of freak out. Like, oh, what if this happens? What if that happens? Oh, no, that fear kind of starts kicking in, and then that internal chatter like gets negative, and then you end up tapping.
Yeah. Well, you manifest it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a great segue into the third thing that you mentioned as far as what conversations with the mind means to you, and you were talking about the internal conversation that you have with yourself. And I've said it many times on this podcast that I think that challenging situations, and jiu-jitsu for me particularly, but for everyone out there listening, like any challenging situation is going to put you in that mindset for growth. That's it's almost a requirement.
Yeah.
Like to push yourself outside your comfort zone.
Oh, definitely. I mean, what's the cheesy phrase? Pressure makes diamonds.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a Overset thing for a reason. Because I mean, you put yourself under pressure and you end up coming out better.
Sure.
Something better than what you were before. At least if you handle it properly, and I guess that's a thing of maturity with the adaptive mindset.
Right, and the conversation you have to have with yourself. Because we're all having this internal conversation. Like,
yeah.
Should I do this? Should I do that? What if that happens? Oh shit, that was scary. All these internal things that we don't even, I'm aware of them a lot of the time because of my mindfulness practice, but I've been developing that for like 10 or 15 years. Most people out there who don't have any awareness practice like that, like most of their automatic thoughts throughout the day just, they don't even notice them happening.
Oh, yeah.
That inner dialogue just becomes like an inner voice.
Yeah, the inner monologue that's going on though. But that's exactly, you know, to me what I think of like with the conversation in the mind is that inner monologue, like that constant ticker tape of thoughts and I don't know, stream of consciousness that's just constantly blasting through there.
Sure, and unfortunately, a lot of ours in this culture is fear-based, like that internal dialogue.
Oh yeah.
Like even your example of you know, racing. Like a lot of people have internal fear dialogue. Like, what if I hit that tree? What if I don't make that jump? What if I, you know? And then they manifest it. Unfortunately,
oh yeah,
you know, because they're so worried about that stuff. It takes up so much of their mental energy that they almost go towards it. But in everyday life, and for the listeners out there, just like everyday use, you know, paying attention to that conversation a little bit more. Just, you know, stopping when you notice like, oh, I just had an opinion on something. Like, sit with it for a little bit and be like, where did that come from? Why do I think about that?
That's something that I've been kind of working on. Is like, you know, especially taking note of like judgmental, negative type of things, and like, why am I being negative about this? Because like, you know, do I really need to be a dick right now? Like, you know, like you think of you see somebody doing something stupid, right? And you kind of like overthink something negative. It's not just like, oh, that's goofy. Like you actually kind of like think something mean, like that guy's a fucking idiot. Like, well, why do I need to be that harsh? Why do I need to be that mean? Like that just negative, judgmental, internal chatter. Like for me, like I'm trying to be more mindful of that. And then take note of it and be like, okay, well, I didn't mean that. Like, you know, like I don't need to be feeling that way.
Right, and you do it to yourself.
Yeah,
because you holding on to that anger isn't doing anything to him.
It's going to end up coming out somewhere else. You know, I'm going to be a jerk to the next guy on a job site, and then the next time I work for him, he's not going to want to help me out as much because I was such an ass. You know, so it's just like you build up all that negative, those negative thoughts and that internal mind chatter, like. You know, like for me, like I'm trying to be more mindful of that and just kind of let that go.
So letting it go requires action, right? That's, I mean, letting it go as, I don't know, it's sort of verbish, right?
Yeah.
It just, I don't know, it screams action. So what action do you take to let it go? What do you do actively?
For me right now, I mean, I'm still working on that, but like it just being conscious of it, then I'm able to just sort of, you know, like it's like if you were writing everything down on paper, well, that one gets thrown away. You know, like it just sort of doesn't become a part of the record keeping, or, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think what I do is, you know, if I have like a negative thought about someone or something or some situation, and I become aware of it and I catch myself and I'm like, why am I thinking that way? How I try and, you know, because we can really dig our claws of attention and energy and focus into negative thoughts, right? And then downward spiral into a rabbit hole if we allow ourselves to, or if we give up the control a little bit. So before that, like when I become aware of it, I'm like, wow, that was really dickish of me to do that. You know, it's difficult to let it go, but I think what I try and do is I try and counter that thought with like other alternatives that could be happening, right? So say I see some guy at the gym and he's misusing a piece of equipment that's like doing damage to that piece of equipment, and in my head I'm like, you fucking asshole, like why don't you learn how to like take care of this shit? And it's not doing him any harm, me thinking this, right? And I could just hold on to that during my whole workout, and it would probably have a negative effect on my workout and keep me in a bad mindset all day.
Yeah, because it does you harm.
Right. But instead, like, I'll catch myself in that thought and be like, oh, well, what if he just doesn't have education around weightlifting? What if he's never been taught how to lift those weights? You know, what if he has... you know, a developmental issue and he literally can't set the weight down softly? Like, I have no idea. So I just start making up all these alternative explanations in my mind, and that sort of lets the air out of the bag of anger, right? So if my anger is like this big whoopee cushion filling up or whatever, like having those alternatives just kind of like let that air back out. You know? And then it's not as like, I'm not as mad that guy's like doing that anymore. I'm like, why does that even affect me? And then all these other questions help me to kind of let it go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I do feel like letting it go is a tag phrase that a lot of us say.
Yeah.
But there's a lot more to letting it go than just saying that. Like there's some action to it, and people let things go in a lot of different ways. We all do it in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
I let certain things go with tears. You know, I let other things go with journaling.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've journaled. One of my favorite activities that I've done is, journaled a goodbye letter to some of my addictions and then like burned it. Right. So like physically, like letting it go with a symbolic gesture, like big things like that. They require action.
Yeah.
You know.
For me, I think that's part of the physical outlet.
Mm-hmm.
For me, is that's where a lot of that stuff goes.
You let it go through physical exertion.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that I definitely process a lot of things. Like I feel more clear a lot of the time when I get out and ride, or like even when I go to the gym. That's why I'm always one of the last people that leaves open mat.
Mm-hmm.
Because I like being there as long as possible. Like it's definitely a good place to just it's a good physical outlet and be at peace at the end of it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I think that's a good segue for us to switch gears into the next segment. So we're going to take a quick commercial break for our listeners and our YouTube people out there. We're going to take a quick break on the audio, but we'll get right back to it with Tom on the second segment of Conversations with the Mind, episode 39. All right, brother. You ready to go again?
Yeah.
All right, so what were we talking about again? Right at the end.
Physical outlet.
Yeah, okay.
For negative.
All right, so we're back with Tom Martin here. Thanks for sticking around on YouTube and to our podcast listeners. So yeah, we were talking about, say it again.
Like the physical outlet for, like that, like you called it, that air bag. Bag of air, like letting that out, like kind of deflating it.
Yeah, so
I think a lot of that I can, process that out that way.
And what do you do now in your current situation? Because you're injured, right?
Yeah.
And I've been in the same place you have too. I'm curious though, like if you don't have that physical outlet to get that out, how do you express that?
I mean, the first week, I was on the couch. That was kind of going into that dark, the darkness there in my head. Kind of the self-pity stage of things, because I think everybody has to process it their own way. And I mean, that's definitely what I did. A lot of time on the couch playing video games. And now, I mean, I'm a little bit more mobile at the moment. So, I mean, I've been getting out in the yard, like getting my garden beds ready for planting, and then like pulling weeds, doing things like that, because I can kind of move around and sit. And so it's easy. But I mean, just finding ways to be productive right now. I think I'm just kind of getting some of that.
Keeping your hands busy.
Yeah, keeping my hands busy.
Yeah, so we were talking about letting things go and how it requires for you some physical release.
Mm-hmm.
And even though you can't do your favorite activities, jiu-jitsu and mountain biking, you can still get it through gardening, getting it through activity, keeping your hands busy, keeping yourself productive.
Yeah.
That's your outlet. That's how you do it.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you let things go.
Yeah,
Nice.
I think so.
I think I used to do that more with my physical. Now I think I do better at letting things go through like meditation and through thought restructuring and shifting my perspective on the situation. I think that's how I let go of things the best these days.
Yeah.
But the physical piece is for sure great.
Yeah.
I mean, we build up tension and we build up with anger and frustration, and get all gnarly and we feel like tight, and we got to go do something physical. You got to go get that out somehow. I mean, there's real chemical stuff going on in your body that you're holding on to that you got to work out of your muscles and get that stuff out.
Yeah, and I mean that then like you're talking about meditation. Like I've been trying to get into. I mean, currently I can't do it, but doing yoga and then starting to learn like what meditation's all about and kind of how to get into it, just to kind of find other outlets and other ways to get and I don't think it's all about necessarily letting negative stuff go either. You know, it's also like intake of like positivity. You know, like going to the gym is such a happy place. Like everybody at Z's is freaking amazing.
I agree.
So you know, like you're not just like emptying out. Like you're getting to refill. You know, if you're talking about like your bag of air, like you're refilling that with like good stuff. You know, like you're gaining back. Like I said, positivity. I know it's kind of cheesy, but like that's how I think of it.
No, you're absolutely right. You know, it's important what you put in here. You know, it's important what you put in your mind. And, you know, a lot of us think of like diet only in regards to like what we eat and drink. But diet is everything you take in. You know, diet is, you know, you take in things through what you choose to view. You know, what you watch on TV. That's diet, man. Are you taking in negative nutrients through your eyes? You know, by watching the news every day. You know, you're gonna feel like shit. You know, what are you listening to? You know, are you listening to positive podcasts that are inspirational? Or are you listening to, you know, stuff that is always like bitch this, bitch that, and putting people down, and you know that's gonna make you feel negative a lot of the time. You know, so all these things are diet, and feeding yourself with good stuff, feeding yourself with healthy things, feeding yourself with new knowledge, with new insight, with humor, with laughter, with love, with all these wonderful things, like that makes a huge difference.
Yeah, it keeps that internal monologue, like it keeps it more positive. You know what I mean? You're less inclined to have negative things to think and say about people the more that you're you know, intaking like more positive things. You know what I mean? Like if you've got the scales tipped, like it like I feel a difference the more that I have thought about that and processed that in my mind. Like I can feel a difference just how I feel day to day. Like I feel better, I feel lighter, you know,
when you're more positive.
Yeah, you know, and around more positive people, and you know, engaged in for me, like you know, everything's tangible, like productive activities, building things, you know. Like I mean, I the other day I can weld right now, you know, like I can sit on a stool and do some stuff on my workbench. So I like fixed a windmill for my boss.
Nice.
You know, like doing stuff like that, like it helps me just feel better, be productive, putting out, you know, good things instead of like, I don't know.
Well, what's the other option? Because I think a lot of people take it.
Yeah, well, see, for me, like there isn't another option. You know, like I've been through some pretty bad injuries that a lot of people would collapse under. That like it was like, okay, well, you know, what do I do next? You know, like I've got no feeling in 3 fingers in my right hand. You know, and what, like I started mountain biking after that injury happened, so I can't even feel my brake finger at all. I don't know if it's on the lever. I don't know what it's doing. I just hope it's responding to what I want it to do.
That's a little risky.
Yeah, and same with my thumb. So I mean, the fact that my thumb's even hooked around the handlebar is a little bit of luck.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. So, you know, like I picked that up afterwards and was like, yeah, no, I'm going to do this. I'm going to figure out how to make it happen.
Yeah, see, then that's what I think is, you know, the difference between you and I and a lot of the people out there who aren't really engaging their potentials, or they're not finding outlets for themselves, is that we have that release. We have that, and yeah, we get injured. But we also have a mentality of like, hey, I felt how good I feel when I do these things. You know, it's worth it to pay that price every once in a while. You know, we've accepted, you know, that we're gonna get hurt. You know, I certainly have in jiu-jitsu. I didn't up to my first injury. I was like, nah, I'm gonna be like one of those phenoms that don't get injured and stuff. And then bam, it happened, and I'm like, oh my God, is this gonna be me for the rest of my life? And then no, it doesn't have to be either or, like in those extremes. But it's more like you're gonna get injured if you do anything for any amount of time that matters.
Yeah.
You know, if I took up professional walking, I'm sure I would have a hip injury at some point, right? In the pursuit of things that we find joy in, if we do it, and we do it hard, and we do it fully, a lot of times, not every time, you know, but a lot of times it costs not just money, but it costs. There's a physical price. It's almost like you have to pay your dues and have like a knee surgery before you know, whatever. But most people I know who pursue things like this that are really important to them in their life, they accept that injury is a part of it.
Yeah.
You know,
You just kind of have to sit and settle with it.
You just, and it sucks. Even though you know it's coming, it still sucks when you get it. But you have to find ways to make it productive, you know, rather than, you know, keep you lost. I can't tell you how many people I've known who've gotten big injuries and then totally given up on what they were pursuing.
Yeah. See, for me right now, that's you know, you got to keep everything more positive, because then you can find the options, and that's you know, why I'm continuing to go into the gym and hang out with everybody is keeping that going, because you know, it helps me keep that mindset of there is no give up option. You know, it's just there's only move forward. So you know, like, I mean, after every time I've had a major injury that should have ended a sports career, like, I'll go back to that sport that it happened in and make sure that I can still do it before I gave up on it.
Has there ever been a sport that you couldn't?
No, not yet.
There's a lot of fear.
I mean, and some of the injuries, like the injury with my right arm, like, that didn't even happen in sports. That was just a young, dumb, drunken, stupid thing. So, you know, like, but I made sure that, because it was during a you know, good rugby career. Like, I was a good rugby player in college, high school and college, and you know, so then I injured myself and then recovered from it, and then made sure, like, I went back and played one more season of rugby just to prove to myself I could do it, and then was like, okay, I'm done now. You know, it wasn't gonna be as good, so you know, it was like, all right, well, what's the next thing? And downhill mountain biking, I don't know, hit a nerve.
But the important thing was that after a failure, you still made an effort to re-engage. Even if it was just that once, to decide that this isn't for you.
Yeah.
You know, the important thing is that you did try it again.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, that's what I think gets lost on a lot of people, is not giving it that one good try afterwards.
Well, I mean, it was like an important part for me of just the mental aspect of recovering from injury, was that, you know, okay, I'm okay, and you know, you had talked about it earlier, like that sense of normal, what normal means to me. You know, it was like, all right, I'm normal. You know, I didn't lose it. And then, you know, with mountain biking, like, yeah, I've been through some, you know, they're not big injuries. Like, I know a lot of people have been through way worse. But just, you know, like the small nagging injuries, dislocating toes and breaking my hands a couple of times. And, you know, some things like that, like separated shoulders. And then all the lacerations, abrasions, all that kind of stuff too. Like, I don't know, like mountain biking is still just it's still so fulfilling that I haven't decided to move on to something else. I'm just trying to now, like, grow and expand, with, you know, adding in jiu-jitsu as well, and you know, training MMA, but, you know, competing in jiu-jitsu as well. Like, it's just another challenge and another puzzle, and I don't know, like I said, more of a growth instead of trying to keep it as a singular thing to focus on. It's
yeah,
like
so you
adding
talk
other
about
aspects of it.
You talk about it like it's a puzzle, and I love that analogy, because it drives one more question, like, what is the deeper puzzle, you know?
Yeah.
Underneath the mountain biking and the jiu-jitsu, like, those are just two expressions of the same puzzle.
Yeah, just different pieces of it.
Right. So this puzzle that we're talking about, like what you and I engage in, what hopefully other listeners are engaging into, these challenging things. Sorry, I lost that word. The word that I was thinking of just a second ago. Where was I going with that? Anyway,
Lost train of thought.
Yeah, it totally, and that's another, I want to talk about this too on a podcast someday, but like, what happens in those moments where those thoughts are just like, they're totally there and they're solid and then poof.
Well,
gone.
I mean, isn't that part of the that conversation inside of your own mind, right? Like,
yeah, totally.
that internal monologue, like it just sort of veers off, and ooh, squirrel. And then you absolutely lose what you were talking about.
Yeah. Well, we were talking about injuries.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Injuries.
Oh yeah. So this puzzle.
Yeah,
so
the
puzzle. Okay. So the puzzle that's underlying all these activities and these challenges that we put ourselves into is really a puzzle of self-knowing. Right?
Well, like you said, self-awareness.
Yeah, we're trying to put together this puzzle of an understanding of who we are and who we want to be, and what does it mean to be human, and what does it mean to be conscious, and what does it mean to live in a universe on a planet that's flying 10,000 miles an hour through space. Like, what is all this stuff? That's the puzzle that these activities give us little glimpses into. So you do mountain biking, yeah, because it's fun. But you do it because you discover things about yourself through the activity. You do jiu-jitsu because it's fun. I mean, it's hard as hell, but you do it because you learn about yourself every single time you step on the mat. So with every time we engage in these activities, it's like getting a new piece to this puzzle. Yeah. Right? And I don't know if if everyone knows that they're missing out on those things, by not engaging in challenging activities, not pushing themselves outside their comfort zone.
I mean, I think that's a lot of it is like, that overcoming uncomfortable situations, like we were talking about, like especially within jiu-jitsu, like, you kind of have to adapt and overcome. Like, okay, well, I'm uncomfortable here. How do what's the piece of the puzzle that fixes this? Like, where's the move? What's the next thing? And it's kind of that, like, just kind of adapting within each situation and then growing from it. Like, and also, like, I was a lot more claustrophobic before I started rolling, especially with Z. I thought he was going to kill me. Like, just the amount of pressure that people can put on you, like, it freaks you out.
That's commonly reported when rolling with Z. Yeah, makes you feel like you're in a tunnel and it's getting smaller and smaller.
Yeah, and just that sort of that feeling, but it was just like, okay, well, I'm uncomfortable here, but what's the solution? Where do I what's the next step? Move forward. How do you get out of this?
Right, because you already had that mindset developed through other athletics and through other challenges, right? Yep. Part of this emotional intelligence, part of the wisdom and the maturity that you've gained has been probably through participation in these activities. Yeah. Right? Because you're challenging yourself. You're challenging yourself with the life and death type problems on a daily basis.
Yeah, well, and this is like a new development for me to actually be aware of that and like be processing it as its own thing. Like just like you learn these lessons, but like you don't see the bigger picture, right? And like I'm starting to see the bigger picture of all of that lining up into how it's made me how I am today and things like that. Like,
so this is, how old are you now?
31.
So early 30s, and it sounds like you're entering a whole new period of your life where self-reflection is taking a great like a much more priority than it did in the past.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Why do you think that happened now?
Well, I mean, currently over the last like couple of weeks, I mean, with the injury and just kind of being stuck in the house pretty much, but just in general, like trying to figure out like why do I feel this way about like my job and where I am in my life, and like just trying to like be happier. You know what I mean? Like, where do I find fulfillment in life, and where do I want to end up? And I think that's just kind of one of those things of just trying to figure out where the hell I'm going in life.
Yeah, it's almost like in our teens and 20s we're just so focused on what am I doing right now.
Yeah, move forward. Like like it's like, where am I supposed to go? What am I supposed to do? Somebody's telling you. I mean, when you're growing up, you're told what to do. You don't have to worry about it. And then, you know, you make a bunch of dumb decisions for yourself through your 20s. And then kind of, at least for me, you know, and then now I'm trying to figure out, where I'm going, what I'm, you know.
Right, 30s, you start to look ahead and like, okay, this life thing, it means business. You know, I got to figure out
There's a lot more out here than what's, you know, right in front of me. So, you know, just kind of figuring that sort of a thing. So it's like been, you know, in my head. So
it's a time of self-reflection and growth for you. You know, in psychology in college, a lot of the classes that we took were like around development of human beings and like how the mind states and mental focus changes over a lifespan. And, you know, there's these periods of time in most humans' lives where, you know, your mental focus is on different things. And it's not always this way, but in general, like, it's this way. And it's like, you know, there's this period in infanthood where you're just like learning at such an incredible rate, you know, so you're just like your mental is a sponge, you know, and then, you know, transitioning into toddlerhood, then, you know, childhood, then young, you know, teenage years, and your focus changes, you know, and then in your 20s, your focus is on present moment and how much, you know, for me it was how fucked up could I get, and how many parties could I go to, and how many sports could I do, and all these things. And then in my 30s, like, you start to switch into like thinking about your future, thinking about your career, thinking about a lot of people start to want to explore their spirituality in their 30s. So you start to think about mortality a little bit more, because your body does start to break down a little bit. You're getting older. You start to think like, oh, I remember when my parents were in their 30s and I thought they were so old. Now I'm in my 30s. So you start to think about things, and at certain developmental stages in someone's development, they'll have these different mindsets. And, you know, we just happen to be in the one where, you know, we're expanding, we're learning, we're trying to figure out who and what we are and what we want to do and how we want to make an impact, and it's an exciting time.
Oh yeah, it's you know, it's like you talk about every stage in life is scary, right? Like it's a scary time as well. Like for me, it's I guess intimidating because there's still so much potential for growth and
yeah, it's still
else. And I mean especially just where I'm at in my life, you know, because I mean I work in manual labor and I have a degree, I just don't like being in an office. So, you know, it's much more fun for me to actually get to work with my hands and do that sort of a thing, but I can't do that forever. You know,
we gotta last. You know? And I think that's another thing that's shifted for me in my 30s, and especially in jiu-jitsu. Probably came through jiu-jitsu, is just that, you know, now I'm more focused on longevity. Like, how do I keep my body in functioning athletic order as long as possible and avoid injury? So now, like in my teens, I had zero thoughts of recovery. Like it was just all production, weightlifting, running, all these things, no recovery. And then my 20s, it was still like compete, push, sleep is your recovery. Maybe a hot tub every once in a while. And now in my 30s, I'm like, okay, 50% of my active time needs to be dedicated to recovery. So like yoga, stretching, you know, sauna, all these things.
Yeah, restorative stuff.
Exactly. And the other half can be physical.
Yeah, see, and I think, you know, like we were talking about with that coming back to like my knee being currently injured, right? Like why I said why now is a valid question, is I just hit that wall of that going through your 20s and just sleep is restorative. You know, like, yeah, I do yoga sometimes, but that was more just to stretch, and because it's a good workout. You know, it's like more mentally restful for me. But I just hit that wall of like, okay, now I know. I need to, you know, spend a lot more time on the recovery thing. You know, now that's my point. I just learned that lesson for myself. So that's why you know, why now, I think, is still an important question to ask. It's how you ask it.
Yeah. And what your focus is on.
Yeah.
Sounds like both you and I are hard learners.
Yes.
Yeah, usually it takes, the universe gives us subtle hints as far as like what we need to learn.
Mm-hmm.
But if we don't pick up on those hints, then it gives us something big, like right in our face. And
Yeah.
for me, it's always, it's been big injuries like that, where the universe is literally like, no, I'm going to slow you down so you pay attention,
Mm-hmm.
to what I've been trying to show you. So these days, I'm trying my best to. One of my good friends, she told me a phrase, and I'm really trying to embody it, and again, positively reinforce this in my mind. But I'll tell myself, I learn best through joy. I learn best through joy,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because I think for the longest time, the story I was telling myself was, I actually learned best through pain,
Yeah.
or I learned best through injury, which was true.
Mm-hmm.
I learned valuable lessons from all my injuries, but I would rather instill joyous states, non-injured states, pain-free states as a form of learning, rather than having to learn the painful way.
Mm-hmm.
So right now, that's something that I'm trying to implement into my internal diet. Is like, I learn through joy. Teach me through joy. Teach me through joy. Just kind of putting that prayer out into the
Yeah.
universe. Like, I'm here. I'm open. Please continue to teach me the way you are, but let's do it in a nice way. I can learn this way too.
That's one of the things it's been a joke with a few of my friends is if you're not crashing, you're not learning.
Yeah, right.
Right, like that's that learning through the pain, learning the hard way.
Mm-hmm.
Or there's the you learn more from your failures than you do your successes type of
Yeah.
a thing. But you can also learn from your successes,
Mm-hmm.
like and learning how to do that more often, I think, is just something that is I guess coming with maturity, right? Like